Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 93 of the Voice of Gord podcast. I had to go back looking through and count them all because I don't normally put out episode numbers with them. I knew I was getting close to 100, so we've got 7 more episodes to go. Not quite sure who I'm going to get on for episode 100. Maybe it'll be a party show, and I'll have a bunch of previous guests on to celebrate and shoot the breeze and keep y'all entertained. In the meantime, I just wanted to let you know that my next guest, you're about to hear Mr. Shelley, CEO of truckparkingclub.com. We just had a wonderful conversation about a problem that many truck drivers are aware of, that of a shortage of parking. Be it public rest areas, truck stops, just anywhere to park. Certain areas of the country are worse than others. And truckparkingclub.com has been, so they sort of built this app that's kind of like AirBnB for truckers, and a place you can park. And there's a myriad of intersecting issues that land in the parking spot when a driver pulls that yellow button and calls it a night. So we had a pretty lengthy conversation about that. And I think it's illuminating, especially for people on the outside looking in. A lot of people listen to this show are not truckers. And if you want to know about, our sort of day-to-day lives and the problems we face, this is a good episode for you. If you're looking for that sort of granular detail about the life of a trucker. Evan and I are both going to be at Matt's this week. It's Tuesday. I should be there tomorrow night. It officially opens Thursday. So if you're listening to this and you're on your way to Matt's, I hope to see you there. I'll be bouncing around all over the place in my sort of signature hat and my swan dry, my blue flannel jacket I bought in New Zealand many years ago. People mistake it for a Canadian tuxedo, but no, it's actually from New Zealand. All right. One more thing. I'm working on a book. As many of you know, I've announced it on a few other shows. It's called End of the Road. Inside the War on Truckers. I just had some flyers made for that, and I'll be handing them out at Matt's as well. If you want to find out more, there'll be a link down below in the show notes. If you want to chip in, that would be even better. The advance I got for the book is pretty small, and any help you can give to help me get the book out the door would be well appreciated. As always, you can email me if you have any questions, suggestions, corrections, or hate mail. Or want to tell me how much you love the show, gordylocks@protonmail.com. My email address is included at the bottom of the show notes. Also, if you haven't, sign up for my Substack, autonomoustruckers.substack.com. All right, let's get to it. Mr. Evan Shelley, CEO of truckparkingclub.com. All right, g'day everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear is of a gentleman who's decided with his business partners to tackle a major problem in the trucking industry and, in a way, a problem with America's infrastructure, and helping to solve both using basically a free market solution. And I've been trying to get this guy on for a long time, but he's so busy fixing this problem and adding more solutions to the mix for it that it's just been hard to nail him down. And anyway, the other voice you're about to hear is Mr. Evan Shelley, the CEO of truckparkingclub.com. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks so much for having me, Gord.
We've met a couple times. Matt's and F3 and here and there. Been meaning to get you on the show for a while, as I just mentioned. I think your project's very interesting. It's been contentious for some people who have sort of grown accustomed to decades of the status quo and who are somewhat antagonistic to the idea of having to pay for a service. But I think in other people paying for it, they solve a problem, which is kind of a tragedy of the commons type issue, which is that there's just not enough truck parking in the United States of America. And maybe you can tell us all about that problem and what made you decide to solve it, and what are the ideas that animate you and your business partner's project here?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, truck parking in the US does have its problems. I think it's been exacerbated over really neglect to really consider it as the United States built out its infrastructure. And as I continue to build the business, I am getting reached out to by many other countries across the world that say there are similar problems elsewhere. But a bit of neglect and just not planning, I think speaking for the US and over decades of, just not being thoughtful about where to put rest areas, and perhaps on the truck stop side, um, we've gotten to a place where there's one space for every 11 trucks, 56 minutes on average to find parking, which puts drivers in a difficult position once a day, right? When they need to park.
Can you repeat that just so everybody heard you? There's how many available public parking spaces versus the number of trucks on the road, that ratio?
Yeah, so there's one space for every 11 trucks. That's the statistics that have been put out. So one parking space for every 11 trucks. So, I think and happy to get into it. You could probably say some percentage of them aren't needing it on a daily base, aren't needing trucks on a day or parking spot on a daily basis. Perhaps, they're not all of them are driving every single day, but for every driver out there, I think they would all all the studies show that it's a very common issue for a driver to find parking. And what was maybe a small problem 20, 30 years ago is become quite a big problem today. um, and that's ultimately why I came up with Truck Parking Club back, I think, 27 months ago now, was to be a part of the solution to the truck parking issue in the US. And, as I started the company, it was really considering that drivers on a daily basis have a problem finding parking, and I believed if you got enough locations and spaces and availability and awareness of availability, that you could have a impact on that and help drivers get safely parked. And I think we are executing on that. We have 1,600 spaces or 1,600 locations now, about 32,000 spaces across the U.S. But we do definitely feel there's a need for tens of thousands of locations to be able to be impactful on the issue. And you know, the longer I build the business, the more I realize it is quite complex and there's a lot to it. So like what we're speaking on right now is really considering overnight parking when a driver needs to stop, after driving 11 hours over a 14-hour period. But there's all these other things, right? A driver needs to drop a trailer and bobtail out somewhere. A driver needs to park a tractor trailer for 4 days and fly home and fly back. So it's quite a big ecosystem of needs on the truck parking side.
Right. There's so much that there's actually so many different factors and aspects to this story, and we're going to get into them all. I want to dig deep, and let's go right to the bottom. At the beginning, at the top of your little segment there, you mentioned that this problem's been around for a while, and it's only been getting worse. So I want to talk about a couple of the possible reasons why it's got worse first. Obviously, the one of them would be the increase in freight volumes, right? So the United States population is increasing, business increases, more freight on the roads, more trucks, right? That's pretty simple. Something else I think is relevant here too is the introduction of the electronic logging device mandate in late 2017, which basically removed a an option for drivers to be a little more loose with their hours and have some room to massage their own schedules. And with this, these government enforced palantirs in the truck, your ability to get away with that and do that massaging was severely limited. And that's why you see truck stops start filling up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and basically are full by dinner time, which is something that never happened when I was doing OTR stuff 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the ELD, what was already a problem just made a problem much worse. Obviously I wasn't in the industry at that time, but I attend a lot of shows and I get to speak with a lot of drivers, and most of them would say that, on speaking on overnight truck parking, that it was, you were able to get around it, as you just mentioned, and able to, it was a more infrequent problem for the average driver. But now we're in a place where um, technology is kind of watching um, the driver. It's nearly impossible to get around it and kind of push until you can find a suitable spot for parking. So I definitely think that that's had a significant impact on the problem.
What else do you see as affecting the truck parking issues? So we've got infrastructure that hasn't kept up, just general growth in the freight market and freight volumes, trucks on the road, ELD mandate. What else do you think might be driving the issue?
Yeah, one thing we haven't really commented on is, truck stops historically made their ROI on a parking lot. They were able to make an ROI on the parking lot, even though they weren't charging for it, right? So you would have a TA come in and build these massive parking lots. And they were able to get an ROI without charging for parking because the drivers were spending money in the stores and they were buying fuel. And, if you build a 300 space truck stop, and everyone, pretty much everyone there spending money with you, the ROI is there, so you don't have to charge. But the world has begun to change, and you now have a world where 50 to 80% of drivers that park at a truck stop, at that particular truck stop, aren't spending money there, which is an interesting thing because it's an interesting question, and we're just kind of riffing here on what changed. I don't know when it changed or why it changed, but truck stops are
I have some ideas about
um,
that.
yeah. Well, I'll finish out my thought, and I'd love to hear the what now, because of that, because half the people in your parking lot aren't spending money, the ROI on the parking lot doesn't make sense. So if the ROI on the parking lot doesn't make sense, because if someone's going to fuel with you, they're going to fuel with you. If they're going to buy something inside, they buy something inside as they're fueling. If building a 300 spaces doesn't make as much sense as 30 spaces, you now see this tightening of capacity, and the truck stop can get away with it because they're not actually making money on the number of people that are parking in their parking lot anymore. They have fuel contracts, they have all these things that you're well aware of that draws the driver into that particular truck stop. So now you don't have incentive for the truck stop to build these large lots. And now there's truck stops, not outside kind of the major ones. You kind of have these fast truck stops that literally almost build no parking. It's like 5 spaces maybe, but then they have fueling prices at like 10, 20, 30 cents below the market rate because they have no really no capex on building out the facility, so they're able to really push numbers in a way that has never really been seen before. So there's some really interesting dynamics there. I actually love to hear what your thoughts are.
On the changes in drivers not spending money at truck stops, I believe there's a Ouroboros or a snake eating its tail component to this story. And it's multifactorial. Maybe the snake eating its tail is the wrong analogy, but I think it's close. The trucking industry I harp on this all the time. It's been lying to itself about a truck driver shortage for 40 odd years now. And in so doing, they've managed to get government money to pay for training and, use other methods to suppress drivers' wages. And as we have inflation and cost of living going up, 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 and truck drivers' wages flatlining, we have less change in the pockets of the average truck driver in order to pay for things. And then I think truck drivers have been getting wise to some of the stuff that goes on at truck stops with like the business side of it, right? Because they're kind of a captured market. You go into a truck stop and like, oh, hey, I lost my cord for my phone. You know, that cord on the rack is $25. They can order it on Amazon for $7. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so guys are just like, why would I do this? And then they bring their own groceries in the truck, and I understand that. Like, it's everyone's in this like competition to push prices down, and we all get caught up in it. And then a lot of the older, sort of smaller truck stop chains like Winn-Dixie and these various others that have gone out of business over the years, and the sort of idea of like truck stops as third place in society, right? Like not just merely a service for the drivers, but like somewhere nearby you could go hang out all night because it was open 24 hours and you could get fresh cooked, like kind of homemade meals 24 hours. After COVID, everybody saw that go away. Like there's no third shift almost anywhere unless it's a really, really big truck stop like Iowa 80 or, your Petros close to bigger cities. And that sort of that cultural cachet and that institution of truck stop as third place, meeting place, community place for many people is sort of kind of lost its sheen or declined or just disappeared. And so now, they don't want to invest in that anymore. So now you see, as you call them, the fast truck stops getting rid of their, decent homemade food and bringing in whatever, what's that pancake chain or, the Wendy's or
IHOP or
IHOP.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, the food. It's just bad food. Like, why would anybody eat it? So again, that's why I called it a snake eating its tail. Drivers have less money. Truck stops try and adjust. The adjustment turns off a bunch of their customers. People stop going. All they use it for is parking. Then the truck stops are like, well, we can't afford to pay for parking lots anymore, so they don't. And so here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a super, super interesting thing. I mean, I've said this too many times now. I probably just need to spend the time to write a very thoughtful paper on what's going on because it's, I've just like this podcast, I've sat on podcasts or just private conversations and talked for hours about that particular dynamic because it is so complex. And I think that focusing on parking, truck stops don't want to have to charge for parking because it alienates your customer, right? In a perfect world, you're not charging for parking. In a perfect world, people are fueling at your store, people are parking at your store, people are going in your store, and people are spending money in that store. And that's a nice trade. Um, but now we're in a world, like you said, where that's not happening, and we now, or truck stops now, have to do it through necessity. So what is actually happening? Truck stops are becoming real estate companies, whether they like it or not. They can go out of business if they want to do that, or they can monetize their real estate. And so it's a really fascinating thing. And then you know understandably from the driver's perspective, then the drivers are like, no, these truck stops can't do this to us. And it's like, I think they have less of a choice, specifically speaking for, you know, independent truck stops outside the majors. I think they have less of a choice than anyone thinks. I don't think that independent truck stops specifically are printing money. Although I think is perhaps the belief. I think it is very tight out there for these smaller chains or like a mom and pop truck stop. Um, So it's a pull. I think it's a pull from a lot of different directions. And in a perfect world, it wouldn't be a thing. But I'm sure you've seen, truck stops do go out of business, and then they barricade off their parking lot, and it's gone, and then someone else 5 years later comes back in and buys it and tries it, and then they go out of business, and it's just like this recurring kind of cycle, because the numbers just don't make sense anymore for that particular area. And you can then go and say, well, the major truck stops have executed so well that they're putting the independents out of business. Perhaps, perhaps that is a conversation there too. And to their credit, Loves doesn't charge for parking, right? So and they run a very good business from as far as truck stops are concerned, from everything I hear. So they've been able to figure it out, and from everything I've heard, they're never going to go into paid parking. So, and which is, I think, the way it should be, honestly, if you can pull it off, and everything makes sense. So it's a fascinating thing. It really is, the entire dynamic.
Let's change it from the sort of private market to the public government market. So you mentioned earlier rest areas. Everyone's seen them. You're driving along the interstate, or somewhere in Canada, or they have like a, hey, welcome to Maryland. Come to our rest area, traveler info center, whatever. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just like 10 parking spots and a little bathroom. Maybe it's not even anything. But the government does build these facilities along the interstates. And from what I understand, the construction of these new facilities, as with many other government programs, seem to cost a whole lot more money than what they're worth and take forever. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, the government is starting to take notice of the truck parking shortage in the U.S., and they are doing everything. They're kind of scrambling to support a solution, or a more spaces. And so how they're going about it is they're doing these multi-$100 million bills, and which we are in support of, to be clear. But they're doing, there's a couple bills that are around $1 billion total that will be allocated to building more parking. Um, and we're for it because the problem is so massive, that I think Truck Parking Club is going to be fine either way, from a private sector perspective, and we think it's the right thing to do to support anything that helps the driver. So that $1 billion will build 10,000 parking spaces max. It's $150,000 plus per parking space. I've seen it as much as $500,000 per parking space for one parking space, not a location of a parking space.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not
Damn.
yeah. So it's not the most efficient use of money.
How much political patronage is that money buying over and above the parking space? Damn, that's some consulting engineers. That's some safety guys. That's some skim off the top for the broker that, contracts the paving companies. Woo, that's a jobs program right there, bro.
Yeah, and you can make the argument that it's stimulating. I think it's just kind of sad that we made it to this position where it's essentially impossible for the government to fix the problem, which I guess is not unusual for the government. But there literally is not. I mean, let's say $20 billion got dumped into truck parking overnight. The problem then becomes, how do you allocate those dollars? And then, as you just mentioned, all the riff that comes out, all the there's probably some nice word to say for all the money getting put in the wrong directions, and then before you know it, it's $200,000 for a parking space, and you're like, how did this happen? It should be $30,000 per space. And so even if the money did get, magically appeared overnight, to get it actually allocated, it's probably pretty similar to like the what was the it was like $200 billion got put toward electrification or something, and then they're like, how many chargers did you build? And they're like 15. And you're like, what? Did you hear that story? It was something
Yeah.
crazy. It was something just phenomenal. It was like hundreds of billions or something, and they built like one charging station. I don't know, it was something crazy.
Yeah,
But that,
and then these same people are talking about electrifying the entire trucking industry. Good luck.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of wild, right?
And oh no, I mean, if I might take a little tangent here, a
Yeah,
lot of you and I spend a lot of time on the internet, and you bump into these like you're not sure if they're real accounts or paid shills or bots or just like ignorant fanboys, especially on Twitter because it's owned by Elon, so this stuff runs wild. Boosting the Tesla Semi. Oh, truck drivers are going to love this. Oh, this truck is amazing. And it's like, whenever you go through the comments on it, it's when you actually see real, actual truck drivers, they're like me. No, this fucking thing's ugly. Actually, our operation requires 2 shifts and 2 drivers, and these things have to work 24 hours a day. Oh, oops, the Tesla Semi has to be plugged in for 7 hours to go 500 miles. And it weighs like another 2,000 pounds. Oh, shoot. What about that? And like people forget about the like, it's all great to have this utopian vision, like I'd love it if the whole world was electrified and there was no emissions and we had super high torque, awesome engines and everything was tickety boo. But where's the generating capacity? Where's the distribution capacity? Where's the super high quick charging stations? Where is this stuff and where is it coming from? And nobody knows and nobody has a real answer.
yeah, yeah. I mean, candidly, I am for progress, whatever progress means. I don't think I'm in a place to really comment on anything but truck parking and logistics, really. Just because I mean, I know my lanes, and I don't want
Oh,
to speak to stuff that I don't really have thorough experience in, but I
you're
do
so
understand that it is.
you're so modest, Evan. You're so modest.
No, I just know that I shouldn't really speak on things that I don't understand all that well. But the electrification thing is interesting, and I think generally speaking, for me, speaking for Evan Shelley, I'm for progress, whatever that is, and I don't know, and I do know in trucking now, electrification is not possible. I can, or not that it's not possible, that it's not able to be rolled out in any real serious capacity today, and so that is a fact, right? I think it's essentially a fact. So I can say, that it's unrealistic to say like we're gonna electrify, like all the trucks in California are gonna be electric soon. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's realistic in any manner based on what I know. Perhaps someone would disagree with me, but a lot of interesting problems in the trucking space. I would say it's filled with things that you could ponder on and write books on, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on that. So something you mentioned earlier is many conversations, and obviously you're speaking with truck stop owners. I'm assuming you've also sat down with, say, management or executives with major truck stop chains to discuss this stuff. If you can share anything from those conversations, what are the people who own truck stops telling you?
Yeah, so it varies quite widely, and we do kind of talk with everyone. Truck stops are 3 to 4% of our locations on Truck Parking Club, so it's not a huge part of our business actually. Although if you went online, you would, you know, perhaps think different, or you would see differently from what people say. But it's 3 to 4% of our locations. It's not really the focus of our business at all. But inherently, what has happened is we are parking all these trucks at our 97% of other locations, and everyone's taking notice that is in truck parking at all, which the major truck stops are really the biggest player. They are the biggest private player, and we're the largest private sector player outside of the major top three truck stops. And I think soon with our scale, we'll be the largest. Now we're a marketplace, right? So we don't own all those. But if you speak with the top three, major three, big three, whatever they call them, truck stops, I think it is still a question mark for them on how they go about their parking lots. And what does that mean? As we kind of already hit on, how big do you make them? Do you just make them small and then you don't have to worry about it? You don't have to charge for parking because you don't really have any spots? Is that the angle? Or is it you build these large lots, you secure them in, you spend all this money, but then everybody pays. Every single person pays because the entire lot is secured, right? So you kind of have this dichotomy of like, do you just ignore it and say someone else in the private sector is going to fix it? And I'm mega truck stop. I have all these fuel contracts. They're going to fuel with me anyway. So it doesn't, and they're going to spend money in the store because they're there. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to build the truck parking spaces and someone else will figure it out. You can go that route. Or you kind of see TA doing this now is where they're taking their 300 space lots, they're fencing them all in, and they're doing gated access. You can't get in unless you take a ticket, and then everyone gets charged. Now, to TA's credit, if you spend money in the store or you buy X amount of fuel or spend X amount of dollars in the store, then your parking is free, which I think is a very reasonable model. They'll validate your parking, so
Yeah,
that
that's that that that
it's a
that
fair trade.
model that model has been around in the Northeast where parking is super scarce for a long time. Like
Mm,
the Petro there in Bordentown, New Jersey. There's a few others I've been to where it's all gated off. There's like a security guy there. He gives you a ticket.
yeah,
Buy X number of gallons of fuel. Parking's on the house. Spend $25 to get a shower in the store. Parking's on the house. You just park
yeah.
there. You're paying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now there's very serious consideration of about that being rolled out in mass, like everywhere. And we're people, these companies and people are approaching us, asking us, how we're going to be involved in that. And I think the answer right now is we don't know. But there are other companies that are actively doing it and actively helping the major truck stops build these facilities. And I don't, I think that makes sense, right? I mean, I'd love to hear what you think. You know, Driver stops at this store, all they're asking you to do is spend money at the store. So rather than spend it on parking, which is gets you almost net zero, you go in the store, you buy something, you go in the store, you get a shower, or you buy fuel. So you get something for that $25, right? So I think it's probably the best way to go about it. What do you think?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I partly sympathize with this argument. If you're sort of a health conscious driver, somebody like a Mike Lombard, uh, you go in the truck stop
Hmm.
and it's like, it's some of this food maybe not the best. Also, the stuff that is good, that high protein, low carbohydrate, semi healthy, is usually overpriced to the moon, two or three times what you'd pay at a grocery store. And so I sort of get that truck stops need to make their margins. If they want that, A, we'll give you the free parking, but you have to spend money here. I think they have to, give some more consideration to the products they have on offer in the store. Another thing, if I'm paying for parking, and this is where it's going to get spicy, is a lot of incidents take place in parking lots and truck stops. Okay. People that don't necessarily know how to back their truck up into spots, people that are driving around too fast, people that get in really late, don't have a spot, and just pull the yellow button in the middle of the parking lot and block people in that are trying to leave at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, and all of a sudden they can't get out. The unfortunate folks who decide to take their 30-minute break on the fuel island. If I'm going to pay whatever it is to park at your truck stop, $10, 15, 20, whatever the price point is, I want that truck stop to have somebody on the fuel island kicking all of the inconsiderate douchebags off of it. Fuel off, get out of here. And then I want somebody else roaming the parking lot in a security fashion, that's actually capable of directing and or helping the less than competent and less than skilled people that our government and industry seem to have abandoned screening out of the business from smashing the hood of my truck, because that's a major problem. You talk to any truck driver, I mean, I see it on Twitter every day, people posting photos. The fucking front fender of their truck's gone. Someone's backed into their trailer. Some guy's parked across and blocked six people in. You know, videos of people getting in fights on fuel islands because someone just left their truck there, walked in the truck stop and disappeared. Yeah, if I'm paying for truck parking, all that stuff has to stop. Has anybody at the higher levels of truck stop operation considered these things?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak um that deep into it. I don't know if I've ever had conversations where it gets that deep into like what it actually needs to happen in the yard of a truck stop, and what are the things that need to come from uh
That's amazing.
turning in a
That's amazing
facility.
to me. Pardon the interruption.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me that these guys haven't considered that, because these are their customers, right? I mean, you could argue that the big three truck stops, their customers aren't actually the drivers. Their customers are the trucking companies who buy fuck tons of fuel off them, from which the big three guys make their margins. That could be who their customers really are at the end of the day.
I'm not saying they haven't considered it, right? To be clear, I'm saying I haven't had thorough conversations about what that looks like because at the end of the day, I actually, have no affiliation. Truck Parking Club really has no affiliation with these major truck stops at this point. We don't, so there's not, we don't, I think we have some of the pilot dealer locations, a handful of those, but outside of that, we don't have any real relationship with them. So as far as like the nuance of like what the operations look like, I'm sure they talk about it internally. I just haven't had those conversations, to be clear.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that's my answer. I'm not against paid parking, right? Like I've seen that you've had some fuzz and some pushback online from people who are, you know, they've become used to the status quo and they think that like parking should be free. And I understand that argument. I get it. But, again, you guys are solving a problem that other people seem to have issues solving. And so, like, when I'm hoping to go back on the road at some point, and when I do, I'm probably going to become one of your number one customers, because I'm willing to pay the 15 or $10 a night or whatever to park in the middle of nowhere at some other guy's facility, so that I avoid the sort of detritus that have been swept into the trucking industry and can't be trusted to be stuck in a 300 truck parking lot with, lest the front end of my truck get destroyed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
So here's another question for you then. You guys have been doing this now for a little over 2 years. You continue onboarding locations. Um, Tell us a little bit about your feedback from the drivers who use your app to find these locations, which, some of us have called the Airbnb of truck parking. And then talk to us about the experience that the hosts have had with the users of Truck Parking Club. Like, just tell us how that breaks down.
Yeah, for sure. So on the driver's side, we call them trucker members, and on the property side, we call them property members. And trucker members, I think initially there was a ton of skepticism, as there should be, right? We're not the first truck parking company that's attempted to do what we've done, and not, there's plenty of companies in the space in general that do some very questionable things. So a lot of skepticism, and even candidly myself, just being like, is this going to work? But now, from 0 to 1,600 locations in a little over 2 years, and tens of thousands of drivers are actively using us, we're in a place where we do get a lot of good feedback with kind of a unconventional model of leveraging existing space at, it could be trucking companies' yards, tow truck companies, truck repair shops, warehouses, CDL schools, all these different places that just have spaces sitting there most all the time, leveraging them, and probably importantly, putting together that experience to where when a driver or trucker members book through us, they show up, they can access the property, they can get parked, and they can exit the property and have a good experience. As you mentioned a couple times, the truck stops, one of the negatives is all the commotion that happens there, the possibility of getting hit. Those things are quite rare for us at Truck Parking Club. A, we don't try to overfill the lots, but B, they're private lots, and I think there's a lot more consideration taken when you're on someone else's property, and it doesn't feel like such a public forum type setting. There's it happens, don't get me wrong, but one of the most common compliments to what we do is it was quiet and I slept great. It was quiet and I slept great. I didn't get woken up. I didn't have any problems because these are private lots, and typically, it's 20 spaces, not 200, and you don't have this high velocity of trucks going through the lot. So there's some pros there. I think if you want to speak on what are the cons, it is, you don't have all the amenities that can come with a truck stop all the time, right? So um, we don't have showers at every facility, right? We don't even have bathrooms at every facility. Now we do have bathrooms at a lot of facilities, and we do have showers at some facilities, and we even have some property members that give away showers, but we don't have all the amenities that you would typically get at a truck stop. But what we found is that our trucker members, essentially figure out how to operate in a way that they still have to fuel at a truck stop. So they're still going to that truck stop, and if they need something, they get it there, or they leverage something like a third party service, like a Uber, Uber Eats. So it's interesting to kind of watch the way trucker members operate. But there are pros and cons to our model of what we do, but we have seen a lot of trucker members adopt it, and that's been really cool to see. And then you ask on the host, what you call property member side. I think for the most part, they're pretty ecstatic about being able to utilize their underutilized space. At the end of the day, you know, money, the economy, economics kind of moves things, and being a property owner, being able to monetize their extra space through something pretty straightforward and simple has been quite good for property owners have been very receptive to it, and it's worked quite well. So we've gotten good feedback there. We don't have much turnover, and I think secondarily, if I'm being honest, there is definitely a sense of pride, especially by people that are very close to the industry, that they're being able to provide these spots for drivers. um in a perfect world, you'd hope it was reversed, but it's just not quite that way. Every single property owner does want to get paid for their spaces being used, and I think that's pretty normal. But yeah, for the most part, um good feedback all around. It does come with its pros and cons, but we are obsessive about making sure that every single driver that books with us has a great experience. And if they don't, we figure out why and we try to rectify the issue. And just to add one more thing, we have 24/7, 365 customer service made up of former drivers. So some of them still have their CDL now. And that's really helped make sure that trucker members that use us have a great experience.
Well, that's interesting. You guys actually have a human being answering the phone when there's some ambiguity about a location or the procedures for that location, or a problem with the app, or some other issue. A driver or a property member can call and get it human rectified 24/7.
Correct. Yeah, 24/7, 365. We always have someone you can call. What is it? 888-899 park. That's the number. Just I ask people to just call in and just talk to them. just talk to our customer service. We call them customer care. Um, just ask them questions, talk to them, ask them about their driving career, ask them, we're obsessive with customer service. We really are.
No, that's great. And in a world where, you know, let me relay a story to you from my own life here. It's not exactly related to your customer care thing, but close. My wife got scammed by some gentlemen from the subcontinent pretending to be the security folks at our local bank. My wife fell for it, and we had some problems getting all of that put back together. Turns out that my automatic, payments and my manual payments to my credit card, they were accepting them, and there was a glitch in the system. I would get a receipt, or I'd get a digital receipt saying, "Hey, yep, thank you for paying," and then they weren't actually going in, and they were getting bounced. And like, my wife sort of handles the house finances. She didn't notice. I get this letter in the mail the other day, and it's saying that like I haven't paid my credit card for X number of months, and I'm like, the fuck? Like I pay it all the time. So it turns out that like they just don't. There's no like a friend of mine described this as automation dependency, where we've now become so used to like apps and systems and computers to do everything for us that there's very little in the way of human follow up. So I'm just perplexed. Like, why wouldn't my bank call? Like, they have my phone number, they have all my information. Everybody wants your information, right? Everybody has to do the verification thing. Well, if you know me, you know my name, you know my phone number, maybe after like a couple of times this happens, you pick up the phone and call me. So, like, I'm actually literally, when we get off this call, I'm going to town to the bank to sit down with them in person and figure all this out and explain why it happened. And it's like, a human could have figured this out. We could have had a phone call. Why didn't you guys call? Right? Like, so the fact that you guys have a human being available 24/7 to deal with anything, any problem for your customers, I think is just great. And I mean, it's going against the grain of like AI and endless robotic menu systems. When you do call places, it's impossible to get a human that knows what they're doing. And then over and above the fact you have humans, you've deliberately went and hired truck drivers and people that understand our culture, what it's like out there to deal with this stuff. I think is a feather in your guys' cap.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was like this grand plan and it was so well orchestrated. But what really happened was when I started the company, I was obviously doing everything, right? I kind of built the first app and website, and then I was doing customer service, taking all the calls, whatever. And one of the first people to use us was a lady named Tracy, and I would call every single customer and just ask. I would talk with them. I was like, "Hey, how was it? What can I do better?" Da, 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 da. And so I talked to her a couple of times, and she was so good over the phone, and she had used us, and I was like, "I'm gonna need someone to help in customer service at some point. Would you be interested?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Yeah, I need to get off the road, or my husband needs to get off the road." I can't remember her exact reasoning. And she's like, "I am actually looking for something." And I was like, "Cool." And so like 2 weeks later, she came on board. She was my first hire, and it worked so well that Tracy and I decided, hey, let's just only hire former drivers or hire drivers, and that worked extremely well. I think ultimately, as we kind of got into it, we were like, yeah, this is the way it has to be. This is the way, to deliver the customer service that we want to deliver to our members. Like this is required. This is with all the nuance that comes um with trucking in general, you do need a human to work on those issues, especially a former driver, right? On top of that, you do need someone that understands from a very real level from their own experiences what that driver's going through.
Yeah, I've had this in my own personal life too. With so my uncle Chris, a former guest of this podcast, He started his own load brokerage when that became like a sort of legal viable thing in the mid 1980s. Him and a business partner and my aunt. And his operating philosophy was like he was a driver and then dispatch and then a company manager. And so he had started at the bottom, just like my dad and my other uncle and me, washing trucks, great, like, literally from the bottom, and knew the industry inside and out. And he did the same thing, like he tried to hire people that like had some interaction with truckers and understood things, and he always like maintained this rule at his brokerage that you never screw the carrier and you try and be as understanding as possible, because who knows what happens out there on the road. And like there's just this human element that you have to acknowledge in business, and it's not just numbers, it's not just moving loads around on your screen. There's a guy out there doing this, and that guy goes through various adversities. And the more you understand that and the more you can empathize with it, the better your relationship will be. And then the better your business will be. And we live in an age of credentialism. And, you didn't go to university? You don't have a BA? You don't have a BSc? You didn't go to this school? I don't know. And I think a lot of the places that interact with truckers don't need to comply with this. Like, I don't understand why there's not more former truckers in the management and freight brokerage side, because like there's no law that says you need a degree to be a freight broker. There's no law that says you need a degree to work for truckparkingclub.com. There's no law that says, whatever trucking company you work for couldn't hire and promote out of their driver pool, pick the guys that, got a bright spark to them, send them to night courses. Like that's what my Uncle Chris did, man. My Uncle Chris never went to school. He got kicked out. He didn't finish high school. He started taking like business courses at a community college at night when he was done being a dispatcher. And why don't these channels open up to get more people from the ground level up into the sort of management and executive, so that people that are running this understand what's actually going on the ground at a more granular level.
I can kind of speak for myself. I think it's a culture thing within the organization, and it's a choice that the leadership has to decide on what what do you want your company to look like? What do you want? Do you want to lift your team up and give them every opportunity to be who you believe they're capable of being and excel and grow and build new departments and I'm going to be honest. I rarely look at resumes when I'm hiring, even for like bigger positions. Like, I mean, some of the hires that from our team, like Reed. I don't even know if the guy has a resume. Lombard, maybe he has a resume. I don't know. I never looked at it. Um,
Well, Lombard's resume is his TikTok channel.
yeah, yeah,
Clearly, he's a student of European history and various wars.
yeah, Napoleon. So, the point being is just that what the culture that I believe that I've built at Truck Parking Club is one that it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter necessarily what your background is. It is the capabilities that I believe I see in you, whatever that is for whatever position it is, and and that every single person on our team has the ability to build themselves into, starting at the bottom, they can build themselves into an executive on the team that's running their own department. And I think I don't just speak that. I'm not just saying that because it sounds good. Tracy, for example, runs an entire department. She was my first hire, and now she has 16 people under her, and she did it all herself. And was she qualified? I don't know what qualified means, but probably not. Like she probably did not have the credentials to be able to do something like that. But what I said was, I believe you can do it. I believe in you. And she went out and put in the hard work and she did it. And so that kind of reverberates across the entire company. So we're not, although I did go to college, I do think that I do not at all, even a little bit, think it's a requirement to be successful, especially in the right culture.
So speaking of college, let's get into a little bit of the ideological understructure going on here. Um, I used to be sort of heavily interested in libertarianism as a sort of political philosophy and approach to life. Maybe not so much anymore. I still lean that way. There's a lot to be learned over from that sort of sphere of thinking. But your guys' approach to Truck Parking Club falls very neatly into that, right? Like you guys are completely free market. You saw a problem in the market. You're trying to solve it. Everything's voluntary. As far as I know, you've never taken a penny from the government or asked them for any help. And you're actually, in a way, helping relieve a problem created by the government through expanding the use of parking capacity where the government has to spend 200 grand to build one space, right? So I'm just sort of curious to know if there was any amongst you or anybody else on your team, if there was any like, a commitment to what you're doing based on this sort of, libertarian free market ideal, or if like you guys were just in it to solve a problem or what?
Yeah, yeah. So, in the beginning, it was really just me. I have a co-founder, but he's not involved in the business at all. Just kind of fell off early in the business. But I, I, I really started the business because I saw an issue, and I actually spent some time thinking about the best way to go about like creating a part of the solution to the issue. I don't think I ever really thought like, hey, this is, a libertarian philosophy. I think kind of inherent, I think kind of inherently, I've always thought of like the free market is the best solution to really any problem. That create a free market, private sector solution, and that's kind of the best. And I guess I just haven't really looked that much into it because it probably is kind of squarely a libertarian kind of philosophy. But I I was just thinking about the problem at hand and thinking about the best way to go about creating a solution to it. And so I don't really have any. There wasn't a manifesto that was just like, this is squarely within my political beliefs or anything like that. I think probably mostly because I just didn't really think about those things. I just kind of believed what I believed and thought that this is America, and you can create cool businesses that solve problems, and thought that creating just an open market uh, for truck parking was a really good way to go about it. And fortunately, that proved to be correct. I don't have like any necessarily grand plan kind of around uh, putting my stance on political thoughts, to be honest.
Okay. Oh no, I figured I'd have to throw that in there because again, I spent a lot of time over in that world, and I'm like, wow, if there was an example of this, Uber freight market or Uber free, oh,
Uber freight.
there's slip of the tongue, serious free market operation. And I mean, I love what you just said there about, this is America, and we can do things. You can just do things, as the kids say, and you guys
Yeah.
have done it. Can you give us a little bit of a background? So you started Truck Parking Club, you and your partners, but like sort of where did you guys come from in business or beforehand that sort of like led you here?
Yeah. And to be clear, like I said, I have one co-founder, and he's no longer involved in the business at all. So there was a very lonely period there in the beginning where it was just me. And I was fortunate, extremely fortunate, to bring in some really awesome people pretty early on. Some of which you've met, like Hunter came in early on.
Oh man,
Um,
Hunter's a beast. If anybody's listening to this and hasn't met Hunter in real life, you're missing out. That guy's hilarious and just a ball of energy.
Yeah, he's one of a kind, man. He's a special human for sure. And I've actually been friends with him a decade now, or over a decade. We just so happened grew up in the same small town and got to know each other. And I gotten some traction in the business, and I was like, "Hey, Hunter, I'd love for you to come on and let's figure out like how you kind of fit into this, and like here's some thoughts." And I think the first time I asked him, he said no, and then it was kind of funny. And then like I don't know, a few months later, I was like, "Hunter, this thing's going, and if you're getting on the train is leaving the station." And he's like, "Yeah, I see it. I want to do this." And so he comes on, and it's been an awesome part of the team. And then obviously, some of the other people have joined us. There's some people behind the scenes, like our chief technology officer and stuff that you never really see. He will be at Matt's, our CTO, which is kind of cool. He's been there since really early on. And uh people like Reed are now partners in the business, which is great. And we brought on Brent Hutto recently, who's now a partner in the business. But to go back to your question, um the it was really, I didn't have a lot of people to actually talk to about, you know, how I should go about this. I think one of the early people that I did talk to that I don't really talk about that much is I talked to Craig Fuller really early on, just trying to understand the business. And how did I come across Craig? Because, he's got a decent following, and it just was one of those things. I think actually I saw him on like CNBC, and I was like in the middle of like trying to understand how truck parking club kind of fit into all this and like how it was all going to work. And I got to know him. I reached out to him, and fortunately he wrote me back, and I bounced a lot of questions off of him. So he kind of helped orchestrate, orchestrate's maybe not the right word, but he was a good feedback loop for me of like, hey, I'm thinking this, what do you think? And like, um, was someone good that I talked to early on as an advisor. Um, but it was really I started the company because I was doing real estate deals in Florida, and I came across a deal that was zoned industrial, that I was looking to get entitlements for a warehouse on. So that was what I did before Truck Parking Club. Is I would go in, find a piece of property that I thought was undervalued, put it under contract, get entitlements for, something that is zoned for, let's say, one house, and then I would entitle it for 300 houses, and then I would flip that property to a developer, and then I would make the alpha created off of making the property more valuable. And that was really my business. And so I came across a piece of property that was zoned industrial, and I was looking at it to zone it for a warehouse, and then I was going to flip it to a developer. And it ended up not being uh, a good layout for a warehouse. So I was like, I had a decent amount of money in the deal, and I didn't want to just walk away from it. So I was thinking about other potential things to do on the property. And the thing I kept hearing, this is 2021, the thing I kept hearing over and over was truck parking. It's huge demand. There's not enough of it. Um, we need more truck parking. Anybody that has industrial land, you should be considering truck parking as an investment. And so I go to I look at our property for it, and I'm like, oh, this could actually be a really good fit. So I go to the municipality and I say, hey, I want to do truck parking here. It's zone industrial. And they go, well, even though it's zone industrial, we're not going to support it. None of the surrounding parcels are going to support it. I suggest you not even try it. And so then I consider, everyone's telling me that there isn't enough of it and there needs to be more. And the municipality is telling me, even though it's zoned industrial, that no one wants it, essentially saying no one wants it around them, don't even try it. And then I'm like, oh, something's going on here. And so that was in 2021. And then over the next 6 to 12 months, I really thought about how do you build so how this is a really interesting opportunity for a free market solution to this problem. That's kind of where my mind immediately went. And it's like, how do you do it? And so as a real estate guy, my mind was like, go buy and build more. Well, you have scalability issues. It's going to take 30 years to create anything substantial from going that route. And then you have investors and you have ROIs and you have all these things, these metrics you have to hit. And if you don't deliver, then the music stops, and then you have these assets, and that's cool. But I didn't think that was the right way to scale this particular business. So I I somehow found out about marketplace models and how you can essentially consolidate all supplies of an industry quickly with no assets through technology. And I went that route, and fortunately it took legs pretty fast. It got traction pretty fast, and that's really how Truck Parking Club started.
Right, very good. So trying to figure out how to best utilize property with all of these other factors at play, and then applying that to what is a nationwide and a kind of a worldwide thing. You mentioned that you've had other countries contact you or potential members in other countries. I mean, the closest one is Canada. Do you guys have any locations in Canada?
So we get approached to go into Canada often, all the time. We just haven't, to be candid. We know that the dynamics in Canada are different than the US, and that especially from like a privacy policy, that the rules are much more strict in Canada. So we just haven't honestly taken the time to make sure that we're adaptable to Canada.
When you say
And
privacy, what do you mean? What does privacy have to do
um,
with truck parking?
yeah, so we're at the end of the day, we're a tech company, and the privacy laws, my understanding, we're to be clear, we're not in Canada. So I'm speaking on kind of what I've been told by people and attorneys. But if we took Truck Parking Club as a box today and we sat it into Canada, we would probably not be compliant in all these various ways that we need to tighten up, or essentially create something that is adaptable for Truck Parking Club Canada, to where we don't get ourselves in some type of situation from a legal standpoint. That I don't even know what that would be, to be clear. But I do know that things are looked at differently in Canada. And so, with that being considered, and considering that we feel like we're 1% of the way in the US, we just stay focused on the US. But do we get asked to open locations in Canada? Yes, often, all the time.
Hmm.
But we haven't went through the brain damage of getting our attorneys to say, hey, here's what we have today in the US. Can we go sit this in Canada as a tech company and be compliant? Okay, no. What all do we need to change? What all do we need to update for terms for Canada? We just haven't done that.
Right. I know a few lawyers in Canada. Maybe I could help you out with that.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. I think for those reasons, we just remain focused on the US. Focus is a big part of our culture, and so we just haven't went through that. But yeah, Canada is a very common one. Central and South America is becoming more common a request. Mexico actually. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and they were asking if we were going to go into Mexico because I'm sure you're well aware there's tons of cross-border activity that no one stays on the Mexico side overnight. That's my understanding. I'm not super versed super well versed in it yet, but uh, and apparently there and there could be some business done there. I've been approached by people in Brazil, I think Colombia, um, Japan, Germany, um, all of which come to me and say, "Hey, there's an issue here too. How are you doing it? Can we partner? Da 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 da." And we've just been kind of slow to do anything on that because there's a huge issue to be solved here in the US, and we don't feel that it's mission accomplished. So why spread ourselves thin and start looking at all these other places? I think the best thing we can do is just remain extremely focused on the US and what we're doing right now.
Right. Well, I think, just off the top of my head, other issues you might run into in other countries, obviously there's cultural stuff. I mean, you mentioned Mexico, big problems with like how the cartels down there do business, which is, uh, not exactly above board and discussed out in the open. I knew some gentlemen from Toronto who were the managers or the producers, I guess, of a very large dance music festival in Playa del Carmen, one of the largest in the world. It was like a week long thing with multiple clubs and outdoor beach venues and stuff, and thousands of people coming from all over the world. And but run by guys from Toronto, and you know, the cartels made life difficult for them, and they had to decamp. And then they ended up in Spain, and then they ended up moving it to Germany after that. Um, yeah, there's different things that come with operating in different countries, and then there's sort of the market too, right? Like I'm just thinking off the top of my head of like Western Canada, of the prairie provinces, and Saskatchewan is famous for not having public parking. Like there's just not enough rest areas in Saskatchewan, like the government ones. They're way behind. The cross Canada traffic's got nowhere to go. Truck stops in Saskatoon and Regina are always maxed out. And, I feel like truck parking club would do really good there. But again, you run into the same attitude of your detractors here. Oh, parking should be free. How come the government's not paying for this? Because in Canada, there's a sort of like the sort of George Grant nationalism, peace, order, and good governance. And contrary to American culture, where it's like, hey, there's a free market, maybe I can like go do this thing and fix it and make money while I'm doing it. Certain other places, it's just assumed that the government does everything, and people don't have that mentality. And then it spreads down into the customer base. Like, why would I pay for this? The government's supposed to do it, right? So that's a sort of another little bridge you guys would have to cross if you were to expand internationally. I'd be happy to, consult with you about the Canada thing for a fee, of course.
Yeah, for sure. No, no doubt, no doubt,
I
no
also
doubt.
have I
No,
also have
I
working
understand.
privileges. You're the first van you put on the road in Canada to like check out properties and deal with customers. You don't have to get me a visa. I'm good to go. So there you are.
There you go. There you go. That's exciting. Yeah, it's definitely something I think about. I've we remain very focused and we just haven't done it. If I was a betting man, Canada will be the first international market we go to for a lot of obvious reasons, right? We have plenty to do here in the US though, right now. So
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking about the 401 corridor, the highway that runs from the border crossing at Windsor and then runs up all along the way into Quebec and then Highway 20. And at certain in sections of Toronto, it's considered like the highest traffic volume highway in North America or highest truck traffic. It's just insane.
really,
There's just I remember when I was running Michigan a lot in like 2000, 2001, 2002. Uh, they've always been fighting my entire career about doing something about the traffic problem in Detroit and Windsor with the old Ambassador Bridge. And then they finally got around to making an agreement and they're building the Gordie Howe Bridge. So they're going to bypass all that truck traffic out of Windsor. And then they've built this like custom huge bridge just for trucks. It's not done yet. Of course, government program, cost overruns, corruption, A lot of corruption on the American side for decades before they even got to building it, because believe it or not, the Ambassador Bridge that went between Windsor and Detroit, most highest volume international freight crossing in North America, privately owned by this Romanian guy in Detroit who owned a trucking company named Matty Marone. And anytime the government tried to like make a proposal to build an alternative to it, he would pay off whatever politician in Michigan, didn't matter, Democrats, Republicans, they're all in on it. He fought tooth and nail to make sure that no other bridge got built so that Matty Maroon would keep making money off the Ambassador Bridge. Total corporate capture. Unbelievable that it went on for so long. And then they finally build another one. And all these construction companies are like totally corrupt. Politicians in Canada. My buddy Mocha did like a whole video series, investigative journalism on this. But anyway, that's because there's just the volume of traffic coming in and out of Ontario and Quebec crossing that border in Detroit is incredible. And the truck traffic, there's nowhere to park in Ontario. It's crazy. They've had even the like home truck parking for the guys that like live there, because of the expansion of let's just say one particular demographic community into the Canadian trucking industry, and their centralization in one part of the greater Toronto area. They've run into problems getting property for their own trucks to park on the weekends or when they're not running. And that's been this ongoing issue where they have all these like illegal truck parkings in one sort of municipality northwest of Toronto. And like all the local government guys and the cops are constantly going in and trying to shut them down because these guys are going pirate. They're just like building their own facilities with like no permits, no licensing, no nothing. They're not zoned for it, but they just do it anyways because there's nowhere for anybody to park. Because
Yeah.
the GTA as like a the greater Toronto area, it's just so massive and there's so many people there now, and the throughput of truck traffic is just off the wall. Nobody can keep up with it. So like if Truck Parking Club was going to expand into Canada, the first place you ought to go is Ontario.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't really know Canada that well. But I have consistently heard that truck parking is a big issue there in certain areas, that it's quite a problem. One of the things you said was about it's a private bridge. How does that even work? How do you go about building your own bridge for public use?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, this is the thing is I guess again, one of the reasons it took so long to build this new bridge a little further south along the river from the ambassador is because of all the entities involved, right? Province of Ontario, Canadian federal government, state of Michigan, United States federal government, all your local governments, all of the like transport regulatory agencies, all the trade groups, all the like. There was just so many fingers and so many hands in that cookie jar for so many years. And then, again, this guy in Detroit who somehow owned the Ambassador Bridge just paid off every single politician he could in Michigan to stymie the development of another bridge just to force everybody to use his. It's like one of these, it's a story that ought to be like worth investigating for the history books of like that fight between like expanding into the newer bridge, getting it built, and then the history of the guy that like had everybody in a stranglehold for decades.
Yeah, it's interesting. We digress, I guess, but it's very interesting to hear.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Shelley, I've kept you for nearly an hour and a half. Is there anything you wanted to add to this or you feel would be relevant to those listening? You just want to promote your business, tell them how it works, how the app works?
Yeah, I can do an overview of the business. I think we've hit most things that I feel competent in is concerning truck parking. I don't think I have anything else on the truck parking side, but I can do an overview on Truck Parking Club real quick and happy to answer any questions you have out of that. So, Truck Parking Club, we're a two-sided marketplace where we help truckers find and reserve parking through our mobile app and website. And we help property owners and businesses monetize their extra space with truck parking. As I mentioned earlier, that can be a trucking company with extra space in their yard, a tow truck company, a truck repair shop, CDL school, warehouse, just any space that's suitable for truck parking. We get them in the business of truck parking. We can do that same day. We have over 1,600 locations, and we add 6 to 8 new locations per day on average, and we're continuing to scale that up. And really, as we talked about earlier, it's all in order to help drivers get safely parked, legally parked more efficiently, because currently it takes 56 minutes per day on average. And our goal is to get that down to 10 minutes or less. So that's, the quick overview of what we do at Truck Parking Club.
I guess you guys have a fairly easy to use app that's full of information, and you guys have like live, like, so like, let's say someone's going down the road, they're like, oh man, I'm going to try and plan my trip, I want to park at this place. They can just click on it and it tells you how many spots there are, all the information about the location.
Yep. Yep. So we have a mobile app and a website, and it will tell you, you can go on and search for parking, anywhere. Just type in the city, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, anywhere. We have locations in most major metros at this point. I think we're in 47 states now. But you can go on and book in real time. We've made it very simple to use. Just nothing too fancy. We want, the point of the app is to get the driver on the app, or fleet manager or dispatcher on the app, find where they need to go quickly, get booked quickly, and get off the app. We understand that that's our role to play, and we try to make it as easy as possible for drivers. And when you book, you get all the information you need about the property to have a good experience. And as we were talking about earlier, we've always got our 24/7, 365 customer service at 888-899 Park. That's there to answer any questions that you have, or help you through any situations that may arise.
Right, that's pretty cool, and it sort of functions a little like Uber or Lyft as well. Like, it handles all the billing and all that stuff in the background. You don't have to worry about it. You just hit the button, away you go.
Yep, 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 yep. All payments just go right through the app. Get it set up your first time, and then after that, it's a breeze. It takes like 30 seconds to book somewhere.
Do you have of your driver members? Do you have a good sense of like how many are company drivers versus owner operators? Have you got, any fleet owners that offer it to their drivers as a thing, like, hey, figure out where you want to park, we'll pay for it, and then like they take care of the billing? Do you have that stuff
Yeah,
going on?
yeah. So we stay at about a 50-50 split between owner operators and company drivers. It stays right in there consistently. And we do have a lot of carriers out there that pay for their drivers parking. And more are adopting it on a daily basis, because uh, carriers are understanding that if they pay for their drivers parking, it increases, it reduces what we call parking anxiety, which is kind of a newer term that we've started to adopt, because it is a real thing. It increases,
Parking anxiety.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to frame that. That might even be the title of the show. Parking anxiety. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. I was at a conference the other day, and someone said it, and I was like, that's a really great way to frame it up. Because it is. I mean, it is very much the case. And so we help to reduce that, and we've had thousands of drivers tell us that it definitely reduces that anxiety for them on a daily basis. And so carriers realize that, which, what does that do? That increases retention, increases satisfaction of the driver, and they get to do what, they don't waste hours a day looking for parking, worrying about parking. And carriers are rapidly realizing that. And I think, um, that will continue to grow over time. And we're continuing to build tools and create technologies that make it easier for carriers to adopt it as well. Um, and because that, I mean, ultimately is going to be, you've got to get the carriers buy-in. In this whole paid parking thing, company drivers are really getting kind of the shortest end of the stick because, they're paying to park someone else's equipment, which is, not a great dynamic. But from what we're seeing, as we continue to make it easier and easier and create more and more locations, carriers are becoming more and more open to paying, and I think that'll continue to increase over time.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned this parking anxiety ties in a little bit to the things I was discussing earlier. Like, you know, uh, it's a crapshoot. I hate to use this like overused term, but like truck stops can be a little bit like Mad Max. The potential for damage, potential for getting blocked in. A lot of guys are having what you might call culture clash at truck stops that they would rather not have to deal with. And then you mentioned that drivers sleep better. Driver health is a major issue. Complying with your hours of service, making sure you're well rested. An alert, healthy, happy driver is a safe driver. And if you have got better sleep because you've got a choice parking location that's away from the hoi polloi, that's what you that's preventative medicine, as it were, and I think is worth the cost. I mean, I would certainly do it for all of those reasons you listed.
Yeah, I mean, just considering uh, what you mentioned and another earlier topic, equipment damage alone, it definitely pays for itself. And one thing we haven't mentioned is productivity, right? So carriers often tell me drivers stop at 9 hours, 9 hours, 9.5 hours. So what does that mean? That means you've got a couple hours left on your clock in a world where why are they? I guess the first question is why are they stopping? They're stopping because they found a free spot, and for them, it makes a lot more sense to take this spot now than drive another hour and then be driving in circles when they don't know of any other spots, right? So what we've done is given the driver the ability to just keep going, not worry about it, have a spot, reduce parking anxiety, park at a place that is in a lot of scenarios much more calm, much less likely to have equipment damage, a more peaceful environment, and that ultimately I think is an efficiency tool, even though it's costing you money on the front end. So but it is an education thing, right? Part of this business is just educating drivers and carriers on what is happening, and that there's a lot of pros that come with the upfront cost of having to pay.
Right. And then the argument you just made about the productivity thing, right? That should appeal to the managers of company who are, afflicted positively or negatively with spreadsheet brain and can only think of things in numbers. So yeah, uh, you've got the hours of service regiment that basically gives you these blocks of time. That's all you're allowed to work. Every hour or 2 hours a day that you lose, you're losing it. That's productive capacity and efficiency out the window. And so your guys' solution helps there too. That's all great stuff, man.
Yeah, I think, and we continue to learn ways that Truck Parking Club is helping drivers and carriers. The things we just mentioned, it wasn't all obvious from the start, but as we continue to grow and scale and have more members and those members have more experiences, we learn all the time about more ways that we're being used and more ways that drivers are leveraging our network to have a better experience and to make more money. So I think as long as we remain focused on that, at our core, and creating all these benefits of leveraging our network, I think we'll be doing the right thing. And half our team's former drivers, so it helps shape the culture and our decisions. And it's not just a capitalistic machine. It also, there's very much consideration of being a benefit to the customer and solving this problem, and being very cognizant of solving the problem first, creating value to our customers, and ultimately that will create a valuable company, and that'll all take care of itself.
All right. Well, like I say, I mean, again, I've been watching the development of your guys' product here and the service you're providing to people. And thus far, I see it as just like a win-win-win all the way around. Also comports with my priors and just helps drivers, man. There's just so many forces at work against the truck driver, and like that's what my book is about. Like I'm calling it End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers. And I choose those words very carefully. And like it doesn't have to be a deliberate war. It doesn't have to be a declared war. It's just all these economic forces, all these regulatory burdens, cultural changes, stuff the government's doing, forces the trucking companies just have to deal with that they can't get around. And it just keeps putting the squeeze on the driver who, at one time was viewed as like the knight of the road, archetypical last American cowboy, made his own way in life. And nothing could be further from the truth about trucking anymore. It's, other than in very small niches and in small parts of the country, it's just truck drivers have just been getting gang fucked by everything. And you guys are providing an out for some of that. And I think it's a very valuable out.
Yeah, candidly though, I mean, I definitely think sometimes, quite naturally, we're considered uh an enemy, because that's the norm. That's more of the norm, right? Of a new company coming in doing something different, and what's the catch? What they're um because we've been screwed up. Drivers have been screwed over by all these other companies or the government or whatever the case may be, so many times, that there's a ton of skepticism, which I think we kind of talked about at the beginning. And that's why I say, just like, as long as we remain true to our values and our mission, and do the right thing, and make the right decisions, and just constantly be interested in improving and iterating for value to the driver, not just for the bottom line. I do believe that Truck Parking Club is a net benefit to drivers, and will continue to make that the case even more so, every single day, as we continue to improve.
Right. Well, sir, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Recording date is Friday, March 21st. Happy spring equinox. Um, I guess we'll all be in Kentucky, and I think you and I are actually staying in the same Airbnb, aren't we? Speaking of truck
Uh,
Airbnb for trucks,
so yeah, I'll see you at Matt's. I'll see the whole crew, Chris Thomas and everybody. It should be an amazing event there at the Mid America Trucking Show. I don't. I think it's a few. I think it might be Reed and Lombard. I know we have an Airbnb with you all, but I think I have parents. My parents that live there. So I am likely crashing with them, but we're definitely gonna get. It's highly likely I will be hanging out there quite a bit. I think Reed and Lombard and a couple other guys are crashing there. But it'll be good to see you, and it'll be good to see the whole crew, and it should be a great time.
the big truck parking club display at Matt's, same location, same number of vans, and Dooner's Freightwave studio, and giving away all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, so they took down the West Wing. So everybody in the West Wing got moved. I think we're in the South Wing this year, and yes, the setup will be quite similar this year. Dooner will be there. I think we've got Kevin Rutherford coming by and doing some podcasts there. And we've got 10 or so people that from our team that's going to be there. So we'll be there in full force. And I'm sure I'll see you there. And you're more than welcome. We're going to have podcasts set up and stuff. So if you want to do some content and stuff, feel free to come by and do whatever you want.
Yeah, hold on one sec, Evan. I want to show you something here. I'll have to pimp the book. So here, you're the first to see it. There's the hold on a minute. How come that's not focusing? There we go.
Here you go.
Yeah, it's the
Oh,
cover of the
that's cool,
book.
man.
Yep, and then all the
That's
information
awesome.
and stuff on the back. Come on, what the heck? There we go.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so we'll come by. We'll talk about the book. We'll talk about trucking, truck parking. Anyone that's listening to
Yeah.
this, I mean, I'll try and get this out the door over the weekend. There's going to be lots of people there. It's always a good time. It's good to get together with people in the industry and meet up. We don't always, get to because we all live all over the place. But Matt's is a good time. I'm really looking forward to it. And if you're listening to this, you should go. If you can't go this year, go next year. It's an institution, and I think one of the, it's the biggest of the sort of truck shows and industry conferences, and represents the vestigial remains of what it meant to be an American trucker at one time. I quite like it as sort of a archaeological dig of sorts. So,
Yeah, it's an amazing event, and I think anyone in the industry, similar to a technology type company like Truck Parking Club, I think they should all be there because it you need to be meeting drivers, not just fancy dinners with carriers and all that stuff. Like you need to be where you've got tens of thousands of drivers because that's where you're going to actually do things for the industry and actually do things for drivers. And if you're not, you're going to find out real quick because the drivers are going to let you know. And that's the purest form of feedback, and that's the way it needs to be. So I would recommend anybody that's interested in getting in the industry, or if you're in the industry, especially on the tech side, you need to be there and understand what this industry is all about.
yeah, they absolutely do. All right, what a great way to end it. So, Evan, how do people find truckparkingclub.com, and how do they sign up? How can they find you online? Sell yourself, sir.
Truckparkingclub.com is really the easiest way. You go on there. If you're interested in checking out our socials, go to truckparkingclub.com, scroll to the bottom. We have all of our socials in the footer. We have a newsletter in the footer. If you're a prospective trucker member, you want to book some parking, you can go in and sign up. And it's as simple. It just takes a couple seconds, and you can go search a location and get booked. And then on the property side, if you want to become a property member and you own property that's suitable for truck parking, you can get signed up as well. And there's a button that says become a property member. And from there, there's a few easy steps to add your property and submit it for review. So it's really that simple. And for anyone out there, if you want to talk with our customer care team, give them a call, ask them some questions. 888-899-PARK. That's 888-899-7275.
Right. Awesome. Well, Mr. Shelley, thanks for being with us, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cord.
All right. Way of the road.